Usually the United States media pays attention to Pakistan only in the context of problems, and particularly for many years in the U.S. mind, Pakistan and Afghanistan were linked together. Since the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan last year, Afghanistan has largely dropped off the U.S. media coverage. We don't hear about it. Yeah, we've moved on. Obviously, Pakistan can't move on in the same way simply by reasons of geography. But to what extent is the current situation in Afghanistan creating or feeding into the domestic crisis in Pakistan? And does it also feed into a sense that Pakistan has been abandoned once again by the United States, just as it did after 1989, 1991, that the U.S. walks away from Afghanistan and essentially leaves Pakistan with the bills to pay? Is there a sense that that is feeding into some of this anti-Americanism or concern about the U.S. role?
Well, definitely that has played a role for decades, and it continues today. And the Pakistani argument is that Afghanistan should not be forgotten, that the West and the international community ought to do more to help stem the humanitarian catastrophe that's unfolding there. And that Pakistan for decades has been generous, even though it's a poor country. It has openly hosted millions of Afghan refugees, many of whom are now in their second and third generation being born in Pakistan. I personally, where I live in my family home in Karachi, the back alley of my home has Afghan refugees living there at this point in time. I was just there past September. So Pakistanis have been generous. The government of Pakistan has been generous, but this creates domestic issues in the sense that there is resource constraints. Not only that are there resource constraints, the crisis in Afghanistan since last year has meant that there is a higher demand for wheat, for example, into Afghanistan that gets smuggled from Pakistan, which is already struggling with wheat shortages, for example. The stoppage of dollar flows into Afghanistan means that dollar demand in Pakistan's black markets goes up. So, for example, right after August last year, while the Pakistani rupee was available for about 160, 70 rupees a dollar in the Karachi open markets, in the black markets of Peshawar, it was available for 180, 185 rupees to the dollar because there was a need across the border for the currency. So it has an economic impact. It becomes a challenge for a state that is already struggling domestically. And the Pakistani view always has been that the United States cannot abandon the Afghan people and Afghan refugees and must come to their aid and assistance. And if it doesn't, it creates not only issues for Pakistan, but for the broader region. Iran is hosting millions of refugees. The stans in Central Asia are hosting them. And as Afghanistan continues to face this catastrophe, the more sort of selfish interest for the West in particular is that ISIS is finding safe havens there. And that's a collective threat for the region and for the world. And so the only way to sort of resolve this situation is for the West to remain engaged, for the United States to take a leadership, and for humanitarian assistance to flow, not only because it's the right moral, ethical thing to do, but also because it serves the strategic interests of the global community.